My name is Denise Elstad. I'm a rural home health nurse with Lakewood Health System, serving patients across Beltrami, Koochiching, and Itasca counties in northern Minnesota. I've been doing this for 14 years. I'm telling you this because what I'm about to describe happened to me in the course of a routine patient visit, and I need you to understand that I am not someone who frightens easily. I am now. The bed was still warm. Not warm like sunlight through a window. Not warm like a heating pad left running. Warm like a body. Like someone had been lying in it minutes ago, maybe less, and had gotten up when they heard my car come down the road. I stood in the doorway of the back bedroom with my hand still pressed flat against the fitted sheet, and I held it there because I needed to be sure. I needed to feel it cooling under my palm because that would confirm what I already knew, that someone had been sleeping in Gerald Falk's cabin, and they were not Gerald Falk. Gerald was 81. He'd had his left leg amputated below the knee in February. Diabetes. He was one of 14 patients on my rotating home health route across the rural stretch between North Ohm and International Falls. Most of my patients lived in small houses in small towns, but Gerald had refused to leave his place on Rainy Lake. He'd lived there year-round since 1997, back when his wife Carol was still alive. After the amputation, his daughter Sheri in Duluth had arranged for home health visits 3 times a week. I'd been seeing him since March. When I pulled up that Thursday morning in late October, Gerald's truck was parked where it always was, next to the woodshed. The cabin sat about 40 yards off the unpaved access road, surrounded by birch and jack pine. No neighbors within a mile. Cell service was unreliable. I found him in his recliner in the main room, asleep. Vitals were fine. But something about the kitchen made me pause. The trash can under the sink had a takeout container in it. Styrofoam, the kind you get from a diner, grease residue, looked like it had held a burger and fries. The nearest place that would use a container like that was the Landing restaurant in Ranier, a solid 25 minutes away. Gerald didn't drive anymore. Sheri had taken his keys in April. I finished my visit and headed for the back bedroom. That's when I felt it. The warm sheet. The bed was made, but loosely. The pillow had an indentation. And there was a smell, not body odor exactly, but the warm human scent of someone who had been lying in an enclosed space for hours. It was a different smell than Gerald. Gerald smelled like menthol and old coffee. This was sharper, younger, like deodorant and sweat. On the floor, just barely visible behind the closet door, was a pair of tennis shoes, white with a gray sole. Men's, maybe size 10 or 11. Gerald wore a 9 on his remaining foot. I picked one up and turned it over. The tread still had the little rubber nubs from the factory. They'd barely been worn. I asked Gerald if anyone else had been staying at the cabin. He said no. That next visit was Saturday. The fridge had a 6-pack of beer on the bottom shelf, Leinenkugels. Gerald didn't drink. He'd quit in 1985 when Carol threatened to leave him. 6 beers, and 2 were missing. There was also a receipt from a gas station in Little Fork, dated 2 days prior, for fuel and a pack of Marlboro Reds. Gerald didn't smoke. Gerald didn't drive. The closet had changed. Gerald's flannels were pushed to one side. On the other side, folded neatly on the shelf, were 3 t-shirts, a hooded sweatshirt, and a pair of jeans. Dark, straight leg, 32-inch waist. Gerald was a 40. Someone had moved in. Not in the way a guest stays, with a suitcase and a timeline. This was incremental. Shoes first, then shirts, then jeans. Settling in by degrees, like someone testing how much they could add before anyone noticed. Gerald's bathroom now had 2 toothbrushes. The second one was red. It was wet. That's the moment I stopped looking for rational explanations. Someone was living in this cabin. Someone who left before I arrived and came back after I left. And Gerald, either because of fear, confusion, or something else I couldn't identify, was not telling me about them. I asked him directly, "Gerald, is someone else staying here with you?" He looked at me, and for the first time in all the months I'd been seeing him, he looked afraid, not confused, not dismissive, afraid. He said, "She told me not to say." I asked who. He shook his head. He picked at the arm of his recliner and wouldn't look at me. Tuesday came. There was a second vehicle parked behind the woodshed, almost completely hidden from the road. A dark green Chevy Blazer, mid-2000s, with Wisconsin plates. The door opened almost immediately. Not Gerald. A woman, mid-30s, maybe younger. Thin, sharp-featured, wearing one of Gerald's flannel shirts over a tank top. She told me her name was Kaylee. She said she was Gerald's grandniece. She said she'd been helping him out for a few weeks. I've worked with elderly patients in rural settings for 11 years. I know what it looks like when someone is being managed. Gerald's eyes went to her before they went to me. Every time. In my car, I called Sheri. I asked if Gerald had a grandniece named Kaylee Holmgren. The silence on the other end lasted 5 full seconds. Sheri said Gerald had no grandniece. Gerald had no living relatives besides her. She had never heard the name Kaylee Holmgren in her life. What they found when they went out there the next day is what stays with me. Kaylee was gone. The blazer was gone. But in the back bedroom closet, behind the shelf where the folded shirts had been, the deputies found a false panel pried away from the wall. Behind it was a space between the interior wall and the exterior insulation, about 18 inches deep, 5 feet long. There was a sleeping bag inside, a pillow, a flashlight, 2 water bottles, and taped to the wall of that crawl space a series of photographs. Gerald asleep in his recliner, Gerald watching television, Gerald eating at his kitchen table, Gerald's exposed stump during what looked like a dressing change. My dressing change. That photograph had been taken from the hallway, through the partially open bedroom door, while I was there, while I was working. I've thought about that photograph more than anything else. Of all the things she could have documented, she chose that. A wound. An absence. The place where part of him used to be. It told me that whatever she wanted from Gerald, it wasn't just his money. She had been there for weeks before she touched his account. She could have taken the card on day 1. She didn't. She waited. She watched. She photographed. Whatever she was looking for, she was still looking for it when I showed up. They never found her. There was one detail I haven't been able to set aside. The stolen blazer had been ticketed twice before it turned up at Gerald's cabin. Once in a gas station lot in Baudette, 12 miles from Rainy Lake, and once parked overnight on a Forest Service road less than a mile from Gerald's access road. Both tickets were from before I ever noticed anything wrong. Before the warm bed, before the shoes, before any of it. She had been watching the cabin from the outside before she ever went in. She had chosen Gerald specifically, an elderly man, alone on a lake. One road in and one road out. A nurse who came 3 times a week on a predictable schedule. She had mapped every variable before she made her move. I don't know what she wanted. I don't know if Gerald knew. Whatever she told him in those weeks, whatever made him look afraid when I asked, what I can't let go of is not the wall cavity or the photographs or the 4 feet. It's Gerald's face when I asked him the first time, "Is someone else staying here with you?" The way he looked at me, not confused, not dismissive, afraid. and I logged the visit and told myself I'd pay closer attention next time. There were 2 more visits before I called anyone. 2 more mornings I drove that access road and knocked on that door and sat across from a frightened old man and did not push hard enough. I tell myself I followed protocol. I did follow protocol. It doesn't help much. I tried to find her myself. Not officially. I have no authority for that. But I'm someone who documents things. It's what my job trained me to do. I spent 3 weeks searching. Variations of the name, the blazer, the Ashland plates, the description I gave the sheriff. I found almost nothing. Almost. There was a report filed in Douglas County, Wisconsin, 14 months before Gerald. An elderly man living alone outside of Solon Springs. A woman had been found living in a structure on his property, a storage shed behind the main house. She had been there for an unknown period of time. The man declined to press charges, declined to give a description, declined to say whether anything had been taken. The responding deputy noted in his report that the man seemed frightened, but would not say of what. The case was closed. I don't know if it was her. I don't know what connects an elderly man in Douglas County to Gerald Falk on Rainy Lake. I don't know what she said to either of them. I don't know what she was looking for. I don't know if she found it. I think about the first day, that warm spot on the bed, how I pressed my hand into it and felt the heat another body had left behind. She had gotten up only moments before, which means she heard me come in, heard me talking to Gerald, heard me walk down the hallway toward the bedroom. And she had waited, somewhere in that cabin, close enough to feel the air move when I opened the door. I think about the photograph of Gerald's stump, taken while I was in the room. I try to calculate the angle, the hallway, the crack in the door, where she would have had to stand. She would have been 4 feet behind me. I don't turn my back to open doors anymore, not at Gerald's cabin, not at any of my patients' homes, not in my own house. I check closets now. I check the spaces behind doors. I press my hand to beds that should be empty, and I wait to see if they're warm. Most of the time, they're not. But I check. Every single time, I check.